Good morning, and thank you for attending this very important news conference. I'm Trooper Anthony Petrosky, Troop N, Community Service Officer and Public Information Officer. Today we're providing the current case status of the Marise Chiverella homicide investigation. After the news conference, you will be given a media packet. Inside this media packet contains all of the posters that we have here, a case overview, and a list of the dignitaries that are up here that I will be announcing shortly. Please use these to provide accurate information to the public. I would now like to introduce dignitaries who are in attendance today. When I introduce their names, they will raise their hands so you can identify them. Captain Michael Carroll, Troop N Commanding Officer. Lieutenant Devin Prudosky, Troop N Criminal Investigations Section Commander. Sergeant Ryan Stefanik, Troop N Criminal Investigations Section Supervisor. Corporal Mark Baron, Troop N Hazleton Patrol Unit Section Supervisor, Lead Investigator of the Marise Chiverella Homicide Investigation. Trooper James Quiros, Troop N Hazleton Criminal Investigation Unit Member. Captain Brian Tobin, retired, former Troop N Criminal Investigation Section Supervisor. Lieutenant Daniel Gentile, retired, former Troop N Criminal Investigation Unit Assessment Member. Corporal Sean Williams, retired, former Troop N Criminal Investigation Assessment Unit Member. Corporal Thomas McAndrew, retired, former Troop N Criminal Investigation Assessment Unit Member. Trooper Donald Good, retired, former Troop N Criminal Investigation Unit Member, one of the initial case investigators. Luzerne County Deputy District Attorney Daniel Zola. Mr. Eric Schubert, genealogist, ES Genealogy. Mr. Ronald Chiverella and family. We will answer any questions that you may have. However, I respectfully ask that they be held until the end of the news conference to allow for each speaker to fully deliver their remarks. I would now like to introduce Lieutenant Devin Prudosky, Troop N Criminal Investigation Section Commander.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to first thank the Chiverella family for believing in us and Pennsylvania State Police, all our investigative skills. I talked to Ron and Carmen Marie this morning. About 4 years ago when I took over the section, I promised them that we would do our best to solve this case, and we're here now. So I do appreciate all their support. I'd like to thank the media for bringing the attention to this case. Obviously, it's almost 58 years old. And it really means a lot to us to share this with the rest of the country. I'd also like to thank my troop commander, Captain Michael Carroll, and retired Area Commander Major Sherman Shadle. He's not here today, but I want to thank them for trusting us to solve this, giving us the ability to use some money that wasn't afforded to us earlier in this investigation to bring this to a conclusion. On the board over here, we have a bunch of people we'd like to recognize for assistance in this case. Obviously, the Chiverella family, our former PSP investigators, ES Genealogy and Mr. Eric Schubert, our PSP DNA laboratory in Greensburg, their captain's here. I'm pointing him out in the back. They helped us tremendously at the end. A lot of DNA, a lot of swabs went to them. They were very good at getting to those samples and providing them back to us what our results were. Luzerne County District Attorney's Office, Luzerne County Coroner's Office, specifically Dr. Charles Schubert. He assisted us with the exhumation, getting what we needed for DNA to process. Cavalry Cemetery, which is down in Drums, was the cemetery that we had to go to for the exhumation. They were great. Wilkes-Barre Burial Vault Service. I'd also like to thank the relatives of the accused. Many people, you can pick your friends, you can pick the job you have, but you can't pick your relatives. I was thankful for them for providing samples, knowing where it could lead, that it could be one of their family members that committed this crime. And I do have to say I do thank them for that. And any other law enforcement agency in the past, when this started, typically it was word of mouth. Investigators drove miles and miles to investigate or look into certain people that they may have believed committed this crime. We went New Jersey State Police, New York State Police, Ohio State Police. It spanned the greater Mid-Atlantic when this started, and all those investigators and all those other agencies, we do appreciate their help. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go through a little bit of the specifics for the case, kind of walk you through where it went. And again, as Trooper Petrosky said, at the end we'll answer all your questions and we'll identify our accused/suspect here in this case. So as we all know, on Wednesday, March 18th, 1964, at approximately 8 a.m., Marise Chiverella left her house at 533 North Alter Street, Hazleton City. She walked in a north direction towards St. Joseph's Parochial School, and she was last seen near 6th Street, and it was 6th Street and Church Street. That's about the last time she was seen. That was about 8:10 a.m. On that morning. At approximately 1 p.m. on March 18, 1964, her body was discovered in a stripping hole that they used for refuse off of Airport Road near the airport, so the Hazleton Municipal Airport. The investigation revealed that Marise was physically and sexually assaulted and murdered and left in the stripping hole. However, all her clothing and all her belongings were there with her. For the first 40-plus years, the Pennsylvania State Police worked this case with old-fashioned police work. They went out, they interviewed people, they sent teletypes, they interviewed other people, and it went word of mouth. Who do you think could have committed this? Who could have committed this crime? Without that, they were using, with all that being said, they were using tangible physical evidence to try and solve this crime. We have moved in a different direction here as we got into DNA evidence through the 90s. Pennsylvania State Police was founded in 1905, so over half of our existence, we've investigated this case. During the last 57 years, generations of troopers, as you see here, have worked this and given it special attention due to the nature of this investigation and the murder. In 2007, the Pennsylvania State Police DNA lab developed a suspect profile from the killer's bodily fluids that were left on Marise's jacket. Shortly thereafter, the DNA profiles for all the original suspects that we had were submitted to the lab. Unfortunately, when they came back, none of them were the same. So we had to eliminate those suspects. In 2007, they also used the DNA profile and uploaded it to the databases, and it was checked monthly for all these years. So for 57 years, that profile was checked monthly against all other criminals that had DNA in the system. We're going to jump from 2007 to 2018. When 2018 hit, we utilized Parabon Nanolabs, which a lot of the news stations have been showing the news conference we did in 2018. They developed a snapshot phenotype facial feature of what the suspect would look like. I'll let that to everybody out there when we show you the suspect if you think if it's something similar or not. However, we got numerous tips. We followed numerous leads. None of them proved to be viable from that news conference. However, what Parabon did do for us is they sent a DNA sample into a file called GEDmatch. And within GEDmatch, it's a genealogy database, and your DNA is compared to other people in that database, and we got a match. Our match was very distal. That came in 2019. It was very distal, which means I believe it was where's Baron at? Sixth cousin, approximately. Somewhere around like sixth cousin, so very distant match. So we conducted research trying to find out what family members were related using genealogy. In 2020, we came to an agreement with the Luzerne County District Attorney's Office to work with Mr. Eric Schubert in ES Genealogy. Mr. Schubert began immediately on our case and was working on a family tree so that we can go back and look at names of relatives of our DNA match. As we researched the list of relatives, our Pennsylvania State Police DNA lab alerted us to the fact that we never created a Y chromosome DNA profile. So your Y chromosome DNA profile is only found in males, and it follows your paternal lineage. So if you're a father, your son has the same Y DNA profile as you, as well as your grandfather, great-grandfather. It follows your line for paternal lineage. That was something new for us. It can mutate, but typically when it mutates, it's off 1 small %, and it's typical that they find it in the same gene that mutates. So in 2020, we established that profile for a Y chromosome. While exploring the genealogical family names, we came across the surname of Palmino. The Palmino name was out of the Weatherly area. We recognized that name from an open homicide investigation that we had in 1972. Through that homicide, we had DNA from that homicide. We utilized that and confirmed through our lab that we were on the right ancestral track. So that was giving us the path to follow. While we were researching the genealogical track of that name, we came across the name of John Palmino. He was a New Jersey State Police captain. So we contacted him for help. He gave us our help. He gave us a family member of his that he considered to be their historian and had a family tree for everybody in his family going back generations. When we got that family tree through the remainder of 2020 and 2021, we interviewed numerous relatives from that family tree to see where it would lead. We acquired many DNA samples, and again, it started narrowing down our pool of suspects. And we were fortunate enough for them to help us with that. So using the samples we obtained, we narrowed potential suspect list down to 4 individuals. One of those individuals had been arrested in 1974 by the Pennsylvania State Police. I believe it was Trooper Geib, who couldn't make it today. He was arrested for involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, sexual assault, and aggravated assault. The same person was also arrested by Hazleton City Police Department in 1978 for reckless endangerment and harassment. Armed with this information and the ability to eliminate the other 3 suspects, we found our main suspect. So our suspect has been identified as James Paul Forte. He was born in 1941 and he died in 1980. Unfortunately, Mr. Forte's not alive for us to prosecute. However, he is the person that committed this crime. So with that information, we did an exhumation on Mr. Forte out of Cavalry Cemetery, which I talked about earlier. That was on January 6th this year, 2022. On February 3rd, 2022, we received the results from our DNA lab. And James Paul Forte matched the DNA profile from the semen stain on Marise Chiverella's jacket. The ability of selecting an unrelated person, as the DNA profile states, is 1 in 480 septillion. So for somebody else to have that profile, you would need 480 septillion other people. So this is an exact match. The Y chromosome also matched to the Y chromosome we had on file. And to put it in perspective, we did a little research. 117 billion people are to have reported lived on Earth at one time or another. So 480 septillion means you would have to go through 4 million other Earths to find the same DNA profile. So we are as exact as we can be. And again, Mr. Forte is our suspect. We're not under the impression that this isn't the only crime that he may have committed, and that maybe there's people out there that this guy may have perpetrated something on them before. So if you do have that information, we ask that you call the State Police at Hazleton. We'd love to talk to you. You can ask for Corporal Baron, Sergeant Stefanik, Trooper Petrosky, or myself, Lieutenant Brutowski. We'd love to talk to some people if there is something else out there that he committed. And with that, I'll turn it over. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant. I would now like to introduce Corporal Mark Baron, who has been the lead investigator on this case. Corporal Baron.
Thank you, Trooper Petrosky. Good morning, everyone. Today is a very important day for the Pennsylvania State Police. It's my impression that this is the 4th oldest cold case, to be solved in the country utilizing genetic genealogy. And that's the tool that Mr. Schubert helped to provide to us. And if it's the 4th oldest cold case in the country to be solved utilizing this technology, it's the oldest in the state. So this is a very important day for our department. It's also an important day for the Hazleton community as a whole. This was a violent and a heinous crime that was committed against a small child. And I'm going to get emotional. We're always told not to get attached to a case, but you can't help it. And it's a vivid memory for everybody who lived through this, and it's a vivid memory for everybody who grew up in this area. You were told by a grandparent, a parent, an aunt, an uncle, this is Marise's story. And what happened to her ushered in a change in this community. Whether you like it or not, the way you lived changed after March 18th of 1964 in Hazleton. And lastly, this has been a day that this family has been waiting for nearly 58 years. And as the lieutenant said, even though we couldn't bring charges against Mr. Forte, I hope that this brings some type of closure for your family. I really do. Now that I have all of that out of the way, I was assigned this case in 2017. And I was told by Corporal McAndrew, who's down there at the end, he was the retiring lead investigator, and he went ahead and told me that this case was solvable. And that the way that you solve this case is that somebody needed to work it. And you had to dedicate a lot of time to it. And with that thought in mind, I spent countless hours on duty, off duty, working this case. My wife will tell you that. And even after I left the criminal investigation unit, when I got promoted, I came back to the troop and I went to Sergeant Stefanik and I asked him if I could still be the lead investigator, and he said absolutely. But when you work a case that's nearly 58 years old, you work as a part of a team. And since March 18th of 1964, we assembled one heck of a team. We had over 230 members of this department that had a hand in this case in some way, shape, or form. And that doesn't include the civilians that worked at the crime lab. They went above and beyond trying to ensure that this case was solved. I'm going to give a shout out to Tim Gavel from the Greensburg Crime Laboratory. He did an excellent job, so thank you, Tim. And recently I was told a story by Sergeant Stefanik, who got it from retired Sergeant Good, that as one of the original investigators on this case, they worked this case from March 18th of 1964 through the end of July of 1964 without taking a day off. And I think that shows the incredible dedication that the original investigators gave to this case. Again, they always tell us not to get emotionally attached to an investigation, but you can't help it. And when we called Mr. Good, he knew the date of this incident like that. So it stuck with him, and it stuck with every member that had some involvement in this case. So with all of that being said, special thanks need to go out to the current command staff of Troop N Hazleton, Captain Michael Carroll, Lieutenant Joseph Sparich, who couldn't be here, and Lieutenant Devin Brutowski. Your willingness to release funds so this investigation could be furthered was greatly appreciated. Without your assistance, we wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't. On a personal note, from myself to all the sergeants who I worked under at PSP Hazleton, thank you for allowing me to still work this case and work all my patrol functions. I appreciate it. That goes out to, again, Sergeant Stefanik, who I named, Lieutenant Jim Danini from Stroudsburg, Sergeant Jerry Ustinovsky from Bloomsburg, and Sergeant Anthony Ferdinand, he's in the back, from PSP Hazleton. To Trooper James Quiros from the Criminal Investigation Unit. Q, thank you for assisting me with conducting all these interviews and getting the DNA. that broke this case open. And to Eric Schubert of ES Genealogy, thank you for providing your expertise and guidance to this case. And then, finally, I just want to say that this case has not only displayed the tenacity of this department, but it also has shown the great work that's being accomplished by law enforcement daily. Even though it took nearly 58 years for this case to be solved, I think that this should instill in the families of victims across the state and across the country a sense of hope. And that hope is that no matter how long it may take, we as law enforcement will never give up in trying to find the perpetrators of these heinous crimes that go on. So, and God willing, in life or in death, you will be found. So, I'll be done now. Thank you.
Thank you, Corporal Baron. Your words are inspiring and a true motivation to all current law enforcement and past. Our next speaker is Mr. Eric Schubert from ES Genealogy. Mr. Schubert sent me an email years ago asking if he could work on our case. For the Pennsylvania State Police, that's a little outside the box. This decision paid off. Mr. Schubert provided a service that we would have never expected, and he reached out to us. We are proud to have him here, and I'm proud to introduce him to come up and speak next, Mr. Eric Schubert.
Thank you, Trooper Petrosky, for the very, very kind words. As was said, my name is Eric Schubert of ES Genealogy. I was the independent consultant brought on through the District Attorney's Office to conduct a genealogy investigation into this case. Just a little bit about my background. My work with genealogy stretches back over 10 years and has been featured nationally. I've assisted in several other cold cases throughout the country over the past 2 years. And as was mentioned, I've been involved in this investigation for about 2 years. So it's certainly something that I've been working on a very long time, and it means a lot to me, as I know it does to so many people here. It really was a multifaceted investigation that left absolutely no stone unturned. At the beginning, as was mentioned, the highest DNA match to Marise's assailant in public DNA databases was about 53 centimorgans. And a centimorgan is, think of it like a unit of measurement for a genetic linkage. You share a set amount of centimorgans with everyone in your family. And 53 is very, very low, as was mentioned. But that was where we started. From there, I conducted traditional family tree research using census records, military records, newspaper records, and more. So we were really zeroing in on families, locations, links, and it took a year, but we were able to go from 53 centimorgans to almost 200, which now is really something that I can work with. It was the strongest and most important lead that we had to date. I'll never forget when Corporal Baron was telling me that we had just gotten that match, because in that moment, I knew that we were going to find the assailant. We quickly worked our way up from that match to a match that in the end was over 1,000 centimorgans. It was about 1,200. That's something that you would share with a person who's a half-uncle, a cousin, that sort of thing. So to go from 53 to 179 to 1,200 took 2 years. And at the end of the day, those matches allowed me to identify the assailant for the state police. So that is a bit of background on the specifics on how this team did it. And on a personal note, I really would like to say that the investigation that went into all of this work was probably the hardest genealogy task that I've ever faced in over 10 years, as long as I've been doing genealogy. I would dare to say that this was probably the hardest thing that I've ever done in my entire life. And it means so much to me that I was able to be on the team that could provide answers for the Chiverella family, and to, of course, help out the state police to close this investigation. With that being said, there's so many people that I want to thank. I'm sure I'm going to miss some people. words can't express my appreciation for Corporal Mark Baron, who was absolutely indispensable in his role as lead investigator on the case. I especially want to thank Trooper Q Rose, Sergeant Stefanik, Trooper Petrosky for not thinking my email was crazy and actually taking me up on it, and especially retired Corporal and former DA's Office Detective Sean Williams for everything they did to assist in solving this case. And like I said, there's so many people who worked on this, so that's just a snippet. But this was really something that is going to stick with me for a very long time, and everyone's work in this was absolutely invaluable to finding James Paul Forte. Their dedication, their advocacy, their support, and contributions were really invaluable to this investigation, and like I said, they all played really vital roles. I was 18 years old when I started working on this case. Now I'm almost 21, so this is something that I've been working on this for a very long time, to say the least. So it's certainly something that I know is going to stick with me because I spent so much time on it. I've been working on it practically my entire undergraduate career so far in college. So the people on this team mean a lot to me. They put so much into it. We worked as a team, and we, in the end, found the answers that everyone was looking for. And like I said, today I especially want to say that my thoughts are with the Chiverellas, especially Marise's great siblings, who I've gotten to know very well over the past 2 years. They've waited so long to have this answer. I, of course, can't put myself in their shoes, but I know how hard this is, and I really want to say that I appreciate all their kind words and support, and it's been great getting to know them. Their words always mean a lot. And it was really important to me that they know how hard this team was working over these past 2 years to find James Paul Forte. It really is a big honor to have assisted. And yes, thank you so much.
Eric, on behalf of all Troop N, it's our honor to have had you work on our case. Next, I'd like to invite Ronald Chiverella, Carmen Marie Radke, and family members to come up and provide some words.
For those of you that may not know, my name is Ronald Chiverella. I'm the oldest child from Carmen and Mary Chiverella. Introduce my sister, Carmen Marie. My younger brother, but the oldest in the middle, is Barry Chiverella and David Chiverella. To the members of the extended family, I wanted to say thank you for coming today, not only for today, but for the support you've provided to us over the years. That's been so important, and I know extremely important to our parents. On behalf of the Carmen and Mary Chiverella family standing here, we really want to offer a heartfelt appreciation and admiration for the Pennsylvania State Police. You know, we keep hearing 58 years, and that, my goodness, that was a long time. But over those 58 years, the Pennsylvania State Police routinely made their presence known continuously through those 58 years. They visited and called with updates to the family. They responded to questions we had. They asked a lot of questions. They provided comfort and hope. And that was a human element, you know, a bit of what Mark Baron had touched on. We've gained a very tight emotional connection to each other. And that can be a little dangerous, I believe, in a professional capacity, but it's also a treasure and a value for a family like ours that were affected by something like Marise's loss. The Pennsylvania State Police were unquestionably committed to solving Marise's case. I know that's repetition, but I'd like you to hear it again because it's something we feel in our hearts. An expression of this comes from a March 20th, 2019 press conference when Trooper Petrosky said, and I paraphrase, he said, "Over the last 55 years, this investigation has not stopped. and it is not going to stop. So it spoke so well to the spirit and the dedication we had seen for the 55 years that preceded that day. And it capsulizes the motivation and the core values also of the Pennsylvania State Police. So, although Trooper Petrosky spoke for himself, he was speaking on behalf of the family, and it also continued to give us the faith that we've had over the previous 55 years. So thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Many worked on Marise's case over the years. We've touched on that. The family remembers individuals like Danny Gentile, who was there, and I won't start trying to figure out how long back it was, Danny, but you were there. You were very, very effective with my family, my mother, and my father, and so forth, and you were a valued asset, no doubt about it. I remember Brian Tobin. Sir, you were there, and you were very effective with helping us. I recall Sean Williams and retired Corporal Tom McAndrew for their help in previous years to where we are today. So with that, our family wants to recognize the Frontline Team. You've heard of portions of it, I believe, maybe all of it that I will miss, but the Frontline Team, which solved Marise's case, and I'm going to call out their names, and I would really appreciate it if you would stand when I call your name. Providing the leadership to the team, his outstanding job was Lieutenant Devin Pertosky. So if you would stand, sir. Yeah. Our family's primary point of contact, and as a professional Pennsylvania State Trooper, and as what became a personal friend, Corporal Baron, Corporal Mark Baron. Trooper James Kuros, sir, you were outstanding. Sergeant Ryan Stefanik. Retired Pennsylvania State Trooper and current Chief of Police at Shikellamy, Pennsylvania, Sean Williams. And to a wonderful individual, young, but he surely proved himself, was our genealogist, volunteer consultant, Eric Schubert. Our family thanks you so much. Thank you. Ready? Mm-hmm. Okay. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Carmen Marie.
We have so many precious memories of Marise. At the same time, our family will always feel the emptiness and the sorrow of her absence. Consequently, we will continue to ask ourselves, what would have been, what could have been. So how does our family further embrace a sense of closure for the harm done to Marise? Our parents' sentiments were expressed a long time ago. They never sought punishment or revenge, but did want justice. Thanks to the Pennsylvania State Police, our family now knows the identity of Marise's murderer. Thanks to the Pennsylvania State Police, justice has been served today. As Marise's siblings, we will keep in mind two biblical teachings. The first comes from Romans chapter 12, verse 19, which reads, "Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord." And the second reading from Matthew chapter 18, verse 6, related to the sin of harming a child. "But anyone who is an obstacle to bring down one of these little ones who have faith will be better thrown into the sea with the great millstone around his neck. So that's what our family will continue to do. Thank you all very much.
I'm going to now introduce the Luzerne County District Attorney, Samuel Sangla Dolce, to provide remarks on behalf of the District Attorney's Office. Sir.
Thank you, everybody. I probably can't say too much that hasn't already been said. You know, the appreciation for the state police cannot be overstated. Their continuous work on a matter at times when we are often short of resources, and it seems like a new emergency comes up every day, but their dedication to this case is really what solved it. My own Deputy District Attorney, Dan Zola, who worked tirelessly with the state police on this case. It's our great regret that we do not get to prosecute the individual responsible. However, I believe the family said it best, that he will face his own vengeance where he is right now. Again, thank you to the family for having patience and faith that eventually we would come to the conclusion and find the identity of the murderer. And thanks to the Pennsylvania State Police and the rest of my team that actually worked tirelessly to find the results in this case. Thank you.
At this point, we would like to take questions. We will do our very best to answer these questions. If for some reason a question arises that we can't answer at this time, we will get back to you. But again, we want accurate information released. As you've heard, this is a case that has been going on for a very long time, just short of 58 years. So keeping the details of this case accurate is what our goal is for today. So I'm going to invite Corporal Baron up here, Lieutenant Bertosky, and Mr. Schubert to come up and answer any questions that you may have.
Do you know how he died? He died fairly young.
Yes, Pennsylvania State Police actually investigated the death of Mr. Forte. We believe he died from natural causes, possibly a heart attack. He was a bartender at Genetti's, right up the street here at the time. I believe am I correct, he died there?
Yeah.
He died at Genetti's. We did the investigation, so yes.
And how close of proximity did these two live?
At the time of the incident, they lived on, Mr. Forte lived on West 14th Street.
Probably six, seven
So-
blocks.
The best that I can tell you is there's not a lot of information on him. As the lieutenant alluded to earlier, he was arrested by our department in 1974. We can't find that report. All that I could tell you from 1974 standards, he was I think he was like a bar supply salesman, whatever that means. That was off of the fingerprint card that we obtained that information.
Maybe back then?
My understanding is that the family did not know who Mr. Forte was. As far as was it random, I would have to assume it was. But, you know, the unfortunate thing with this case, with him never being interviewed, you know, we're going to know who did it, but all of those other questions we just don't have answers for.
Go ahead.
Do you guys know if he committed any other crimes against other kids or other people?
We don't, yeah, the only two things that we know of are the two that I mentioned earlier. The 1974 sexual assault. We won't go with the lady's name. We have interviewed her. So that was actually a very violent encounter, and I believe she felt that she could have been killed at that time. It just somebody happened upon the incident and stopped it. So we know of that, and we also know of another incident that the city police arrested him for in 78. Which it was a minor offense type thing, but that's the only two. And that's why I will put this out there. If there are people that know, we would sure love to hear from you. So anybody that's out there listening to this, we'd definitely like to hear from you and get a better understanding of who this person was.
Did he do any time for those two crimes?
The 1978 case, I can't speak to. That wasn't ever on his criminal record. The 1974 case that the lieutenant's been talking about, he actually pled guilty to aggravated assault and got a year probation.
You mentioned Mr. Ford's family was, helpful in some way in terms of DNA, or can you go into what exactly they did to help you guys?
So Corporal Baron and Trooper Quiros were basically leading this investigation. With information received from Mr. Schubert here, we would go out to certain relatives and we ask for buccal swabs. So basically a swab for the inside of your cheek that gives you the cells that we can use to identify DNA profile. And we would use that profile and match it up against the killer. But also, he was talking about centimorgans and all that, so we also did utilize genealogical databases that are for the public use. So that would give us a match as far as centimorgans between which he had talked about. So with all that, we would get a little bit closer at times. We did at one point get his brother's DNA, because as I talked, we got down to 2 people. We knew the matriarchal line of the family. Again, thanks to Mr. Schubert, we knew the patriarchal line. So we knew it had to come from this one family. And we, however, both of them were dead. What would be his sister-in-law gave us some material to work with, and we were able to produce a DNA profile for the brother. Once we had that, we knew we were very close. And then we knew we had to meet with the DA's office and do an exhumation. And we were pretty confident at that point. We had already spoke with the Chiverellas. We told them where we were. This was going to be our guy, but we were going to prove it. And I think we did that.
And just a follow-up for Eric, you mentioned you're not even 21 yet, correct?
Still 20.
But I heard that you've been doing this for 10 years, you said?
Yeah, I've been involved in genealogy for about 10 years. I've been involved in cold cases for about 2, and genetic genealogy for about 5. So this is certainly a case that I've been working on for a long time, as I've mentioned, as has everyone else here, and it couldn't have gotten done without everyone's input and opinions and that sort of thing coming into the case.
Can I just on the, if you could save that for 1 second. I vetted him before we used him. He did help solve other cold cases. There was one, definitely, I talked to a police department in Chicago, outside of Chicago. Couldn't talk any better about the man. And another Upper Marion Police in outside of Philadelphia he'd help with. So I did vet him, so we knew what we were getting, and we're very thankful for what we got.
I was just going to say, Eric, how does someone get into this line of work at 10, 11 years old?
I was homesick a lot when I was a kid, so I would see genealogy commercials, and I would say, wait a second, maybe I could do that. And I thought it would be a 2-week thing, and here I am. But I'm certainly thankful I started.
We did it on January 6th this year. And again, I pointed out that Cavalry Cemetery helped us quite a bit, and I do thank them for keeping it quiet. Obviously, they knew where we were digging, they knew who was in the grave, and they were very cooperative with us in keeping it to themselves. And we do appreciate that. If I could speak, at least for the 3 of us, because we've had many conversations, we banged our head on the wall a few times, and had to just regroup. And he would go back and do more research for newspaper articles, all the other things that he would use, military records, anything we can get. Corporal Baron and Trooper Quiros would bang on more doors and talk to more people. We got fortunate, we got lucky a few times, and sometimes being lucky is better than good. And in this case, we'll take the luck. But yes, we had some times where it wasn't fun, but we got there. Go ahead.
Back to writing the movie script. I was just wondering, like, Eric, how does it happen that you reach out to these guys? I mean, what was that like when you said, hey, I'm a local kid and I'm good at genealogy, I'm going to be able to solve this 50-plus-year-old murder case? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I saw the news reports, and at the time, I had previous cold case experience. I was looking for my next case where I could potentially be of help. And Marise's case was, I believe, I remember it vividly, it was the first one I came across when I started looking for the next area in which I could help. So I certainly didn't know if my strategy of just reaching out and saying, hey, I think I know what I'm doing. If I'm not stepping on any toes, I'd be happy to help. I didn't think that would work, but it did, and I'm very thankful for that. Because I knew that I could at least potentially get this case a little closer to being solved. And in the end, I'm happy we could pull it off.
Yeah, what college did you attend?
Elizabethtown College in Lancaster County.
And are you a junior?
Yes, junior.
What's your major?
History. Shocker?
Go ahead in the back.
Eric, have you ever considered doing a podcast or anything?
I mean, maybe I'll have to take you up on that idea now that you said it.
Yeah, that's where we obtained that photo from. It's from I think it's a 1959, if it's considered Hazleton. I don't
That was
know.
Weatherly, wasn't it?
No, it's not.
No,
I think it's Hazleton.
It's Hazleton,
Yeah.
but I mean, I don't know back in the day how they referred to that school. I guess it would be Hazleton High School.
But of any of the other pictures that we did find, they were later in life. So this would probably be the closest to when it happened, because he was 22?
22 at the time.
22 at the time, so a couple years out of high school.
The 1974 sexual assault, where was that?
That happened in Hazel Township, which we're in now. Happened out near Stockton, so it'd be east of Hazleton City, in a stripping area where they were mining coal. It was out on I believe on a dirt road out there. Anyone else? Oh, sorry, sir.
How did you discover the body?
How did we discover the body? You know exactly that story.
There was I believe he was 16 at the time, went out into the stripping pit to learn how to drive, I believe, was the way that it was written. And his uncle took him. And being as though this location was a stripping pit used for refuse, there were a lot of scrappers back in the day and pickers, and they would commonly go and look to see if there was anything of value. And the day that they discovered Marise in the stripping pit, they looked down. Now obviously it's not there anymore. That whole area has been reclaimed, but you could, from all the photos that I've ever seen, you could look down into this pit, and they thought that it was a large doll that was just laid there, or seemed to have been placed there. And upon closer inspection, they found that it was actually Marise Chiverella. And then they notified the Hazleton State Police, Trooper Raymond Dobrzelski, who is still with us. He's up in, I believe, Susquehanna County residing. He was the first trooper on scene. Confirmed that, the Marise was deceased. Called back to the barracks, and Detective Sergeant Michael Dean responded out to the scene and started the investigation, and that's how she was discovered.
Anyone else? You want to close?
So thank you for attending. Thank you for getting this message out there. We appreciate it on behalf of all members of Troop N. Thank you.